Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of a multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood, and gut issues.
While busyness, addictive doing, people-pleasing, and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself, and step into the life of your dreams.
Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. You are in for a treat today. Chris and I just recently interviewed the amazing Jessica Maguire, who is the founder of the Nervous System School. And I've been following her on socials for quite a long time. I love her take on the nervous system. She is so intelligent, which you are definitely going to gather when we have this conversation today, and so thorough in her thinking around how the nervous system works and how it impacts the rest of our body, and also some really practical tools to support your system depending on where your nervous system is at. There were so many. You will just hear Chris and I say a lot, wow. Oh my gosh, there are a lot of light bulb moments that we had, some huge knowledge bombs, and this is going to be really great, especially if you feel like you have tried so many things in our practice ending body burnout method. We're going beyond just using standard functional medicine protocols. Yes, that's important, can definitely help with the healing and recovery from body burnout symptoms. But if the other part of you, the brain, the nervous system, the neural pathways, the unconscious mind isn't addressed, and it is also in a dysregulated and inflamed state, then it's really hard for people to get long-term healing or to even get any results at all. So this is going to allow you to really just see a different lens in terms of the body-mind connection and how it's not about treating one or the other. It's actually looking at how our whole self interacts as an entire being. So Jessica is, as I mentioned, the founder of the Nervous System School. She holds a Bachelor of Health Science and a Master of Physiotherapy. Her postgraduate study includes the fields of neuroscience, neuroplasticity, the Polyvagal theory, and transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulation. As a TEDx speaker, lecturer, and internationally published author, she believes that knowledge is power. Jessica teaches a long-term, sustainable, profoundly transformative methodology of nervous system repair, empowering students to step into the driver's seat of their own health and well-being. Today, her teachings have impacted the lives of over 16,000 students worldwide. And so I'm so excited for your beautiful ears to hear this conversation today. You're going to get so many takeaways.
Howdy everybody, welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are so excited to bring this episode to you. We have our special guest, Jessica Maguire.
Yeah,
Philly.
I'm so excited to talk to Jessica.
It's going to be a good one.
I've been following you on Instagram for a long time. You have the Nervous System School, and you're just, one of the thought leaders I feel in nervous system, especially in Australia, but also globally, yeah.
You, Philly? Yeah, it's been a really interesting few years sharing my knowledge on the nervous system, and we do have quite a global audience now. It's grown to be bigger than what I could have ever imagined when I first started talking about the nervous system through our social media channels. So it's a really exciting time for us.
Yeah, it's so cool. So we love with our guests to dive into just getting to know you personally and our listeners to know you personally, because often there's an overflow of your own experiences and then embodying what you do with what you do to help other people as well. So talking about body burnout, do you have an experience of when you struggled with body burnout? What did that look like? When was it? And how did you move out of it?
Yes, I do. So it's probably going back, I'm going to say about 12 years ago, and I had my own physiotherapy clinic. So it was busy, and looking at it now in hindsight, the younger version of myself who had these really high, lofty expectations and thought she could do it all, was seeing a full patient case per day, plus managing the practice and a team of other people, and then still looking at business operations. And, that's really three roles in one.
Mm-hmm.
But I would often tune out listening to my own body and what it needed for that bit of a story around, had to do it all, had to be everything to everyone. And so it didn't take, well, it took a few years, but I started to get some digestive symptoms first of all show up. And I find for me, that's always the first clue of when I've been pushing it a bit too far. And then that also coincided with some insomnia and a stage where I hit burnout. But it was I think it's an interesting lesson because you can then really empathize with the people that you help if you've been there yourself. But it also was one of the steps towards learning more about the nervous system and the work that I teach today. And I think you really need to be able to walk the talk as a clinician if you're going to help other people. It's good if you can recognize that, empathize with other people, but also you've really embodied the work that you're teaching.
Yeah, you've practiced the tools or the things in order to be able to help people, because it's very different just like textbook. This is what you should do to, I actually really know what it feels like to be in that situation and actually to do or be, to move out of that. So you mentioned like the lofty ideals, expectations, wanting to be everything for everyone. What do you feel like was the deepest root that led to the burnout back in practice?
I definitely think it was beliefs around that were outside of my awareness. Like I didn't have the self-awareness. And I think also I didn't have this understanding of my own nervous system to be able to recognize, I've shifted into a state of sympathetic overdrive, or I'm starting to shift into this state of feeling burnt out. I just didn't have that awareness or knowledge, which is, pretty much the entire starting point for all our education programs now. And I think I just didn't have the skills to be able to look at the underlying beliefs that were driving my behaviors and choices, and to step back and see the big picture. I wasn't very old. It was the first time I'd ever run a business. I wanted to do really well with it, but also there were just things I didn't know about, what to do at tax time, what to do with employment things. And I think they were big challenges, but I like to say that was a little bit of my apprenticeship around learning about myself and how to work with a team, which has paid off to today. And it's just a stepping stone in the work of what nervous system school does now. But I think knowing now what I know, if I'd had the skills to recognize what was going on in my brain and my body at that time, I could have probably taken steps that were a little bit more kinder to myself, but also a little bit more empowering, and asked for help sooner and recognize when it was time to cut back a little bit when I was pushing to do more.
I'm curious, this isn't a question that I sent to you, but like moving from physiotherapy, like standard physiotherapy, to nervous system, why did you make that jump, that leap over?
It's very intricately connected, the work that I was doing and the work that I do now. It's looking at the communication between the brain and body. When we look at what physical pain is, when I had a lot of people that came to me with persistent pain that had gone through, the usual routes initially to get treatment, and that hadn't worked. And so it tended to be the clinic that GPs referred to when they were like, oh, this is a chronic case, or this is complex because there's PTSD involved, or there's anxiety, or there's gut disorders. And so I actually really enjoyed that challenge. And I'd had an intuitive knowing for a long time that, there's this emotional component to it that was underneath for a lot of these people. Like the story was always the same. It was something along the lines of someone had been through a difficult period in their life and they'd had a flare up of their symptoms. And each time there was something emotional going on, or they were outside, into that high levels of stress for long periods of time, then their pain would flare up. And so I was looking for frameworks of understanding for myself as a clinician, but also to educate patients in a way that wasn't sending the message, it's all in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Because for a lot of the time, that's what patients are getting when clinicians try to educate them around the connection between the brain and the body. And we know that when there's physical pain, there are changes that happen in the brain around processing that pain. However, that's not to say that the pain isn't very real. And I've always loved shades of grey. I like the place where there's complexity and nuance. Probably the thing that irritates me more than anything on social media is saying everybody should do this all of the time, and that will fix. I see it with trauma now. Like it's my bugbear. But for me, once I got a deeper understanding into neuroscience, I looked into a lot of biofeedback. Before physiotherapy, I was doing a lot of study that looked at with ECGs in the heart. It was kind of a unique way that I was beginning to see the connection between what we might say is musculoskeletal combined with what is nervous system, combined with immune and endocrine. And rather than having this separation, I began just to look at, well, how does the brain and body communicate? And it just became such a fascination. I mean, I became really obsessed with it. And through 2015 to 2018, I started to step away from traditional physiotherapy and do more postgraduate study. And then around about 2018, we taught the first vagus nerve masterclass. And I was predominantly doing this with my patients. And then it just really grew. People were really wanting this work because it was giving them frameworks to understand why they were having chronic health issues, but also in the moment to say, I recognize this response in my brain and my body. And that reappraisal, to see what was going on, was so empowering because it stopped people feeling like, there's something wrong with me. It was like this pause to go, no, this is my nervous system responding in this way because this is what it's learnt from my past. And so it just was this wonderful evolution into then the vagus nerve program. And I think we've now had over 16,000 students come through nervous systems.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's so amazing. I didn't see this happening. It was just, I had a compelling desire to share this information and really give people back this sense of agency, because if we look at what traumatic stress is, it's a loss of agency, it's a loss of power. So I wanted people to feel like, you step back into the driver's seat, I'll just show you the ways that you can do that.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I feel like my own journey as well, I got into functional medicine, nutrition because of my own health issues, but got stuck at COVID time when all my health issues flared up again. And it's like, why are the supplements and the diets and the exercise and even the meditation, why is it not working this time? And it was, my whole system had got to a point where it's like, this isn't just physical anymore. There were so many neural pathways and my nervous system was so stuck in fight flight that was the next level of healing that needed to happen in order for my body to actually be able to heal. But there was still like, it's interesting when you said, because there is the message of it's all in your head. Just like calm down, just relax, stop stressing. Yeah. And that can be really disempowering for people. But when you can understand that, yes, emotions and stress affect you, but it's affecting you in a really physiological way. For me, I had histamine intolerance. So literally, like, my body was producing a lot of histamine. There was a physical response there, but there was a deeper nervous system, emotional reason that was leading to that. Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Because we've separated systems that actually communicate together. Like, we can actually think of it as the neuroimmune system when it comes to pain, because there's just as much a response of the immune system as there is of the neurons. And I think, whilst the term neuroplasticity has been really helpful for us to understand change, we like to talk about it as bioplasticity, because it is not just neurons that are changing when we have things in our past that are traumatic. It's also things like our immune system, and our immune system has a memory. It remembers what happens. And it's also then our endocrine system, it's our digestive system. But that's also the positive side, is that what we do, because it's all going to change anyway, we can just influence the way that it changes, in a nourishing or a depleting way. And I think that's where what you're saying, the essence of what we can call healing, there's so much science to show how these systems connect together. And when we look at the emotional part, we're also working on the physiology, which is such an amazing thing.
Yeah, it's so cool. So cool, the holistic approach. Now, you have a lot of emphasis on the vagus nerve in nervous system school. Can you talk about what that is, and specifically, like, in context of a lot of our listeners are busy, overwhelmed, maybe running perfectionism, people-pleasing type patterns. Why are they more susceptible to having a wonky vagus nerve?
Oh, such a good question. Love the vagus nerve. Could talk about it all day, so I'll try not to nerd out on it too much. But the vagus nerve is one of our cranial nerves, and these are really the nerves that act like a bridge between the body and the brain. So to make it easy to understand where it runs, if you place one hand on the back of your head where the skull meets the neck and you went inwards from there, we have our brainstem, and that's where it originates. So it starts from there, and one of the branches goes to the heart. And so this is the branch that returns us back towards regulation and slows our physiology down, because it connects directly to the heart's pacemaker. The other branch goes from the brainstem right down to the lower abdomen, and it touches almost every organ on the way, which is amazing. So it's got, I hear, this is another one of my social media whinges. We hear a lot about how we can just hack the vagus nerve, and it's like this one nerve that if we fix it, all our problems will go away. But it's useful to think of it more like, almost like a series of ecosystems in a forest. We've got that one branch that's coming down to the heart, one branch that's coming to our gut. We also have a branch from our heart that goes up to our face, and that's involved with communication, speech, and it's influencing the people around us. And it's why we are influenced by the people who we're spending time with. So, if we're around people who are stressed, who are dysregulated, we eventually ourselves will be picking up on cues, most likely outside of our conscious awareness, that will change our own physiology, making us more prone to shifting towards dysregulation as well. So really interesting how we can see there's the emotional part, there's the physiological part, but there's really, what I find so fascinating is the relational part, and this sense of belonging to, within our communities at large even, will be impacting on our nervous system.
Wow.
I have a question about that. So
my brain is just going, Super cool.
So if we're picking up on, like, unconsciously as well, picking up on cues, can that be different from one person to the next in terms of their past experience and maybe even their belief system that they have about themselves?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, somebody could remind us of somebody in our past who, we didn't feel was that safe to be around, and that could be setting things up. I think it's very easy for people, if we're in relationships today where something feels similar from a body-based perspective to something that a previous partner did, we might react pretty quickly and feel ourselves, but yeah, it's really like through the sound of someone's voice, their gestures, like the movements of their head and neck. It's the expression on their face that are sending these cues that are going to the lower parts of our brain, not necessarily into the cognitive parts where we make those rational, slower decisions. It's more to the part that moves quickly and will be related to past memories that we've stored outside of conscious awareness.
So if this is happening, like what's the next step to help regulate? Is it kind of like returning back to yourself, or is there things that you could do so that if you're in that situation again with that person and they haven't changed, you can become more resilient? I know that this will be a question that listeners ask as well.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think for any of this before where we first start, like a lot of people say, well, what can I do as the best exercise? Before we start, it needs to be having this awareness of what our nervous system is doing and what state we're moving into. So for instance, let's say we're around someone who might be, checking their phone, looking away, not really listening. We can feel this reaction in our body, and it might go in two ways. So we might notice that we get irritation. We get like our heart beats a little bit faster. We get our jaw clenching and we're like, oh, they're so rude. So that could be one response. But when we've done the role playing with this, one thing that actually happened more, which I was really surprised with in our workshops, was that a lot of people actually had a shame response, and they had a little bit of like a collapse. Oh, what I have to say isn't actually worth listening to anyway. And so there was a drop in their nervous system of what we might say led them more to this state of hypoarousal, and we might look at it as like a shutting down where they didn't speak much after that. So whatever state we move into, we will use different resources, because if we're talking about how our nervous system changes through that word I mentioned before around neuroplasticity, which basically just means neurons, and plasticity means to change, we need to be specific in order for that process to happen. So one way that we can look at this is, first of all, learning to recognize the states. And if we are moving up into that heightened state where we've got the anger, the irritation, that might mean where we want to coax our nervous system back down a little bit. And so the ways that we might need to do that is being able to go, okay, I recognize the clenched jaw. I recognize the tense shoulders and my racing heart. If I just can soften through the jaw, if I can connect to my environment by slowing down a little bit, and this could be like, I'm going to just slowly look around the environment for a minute. But on the other hand, if we've had that drop in physiology, well, we might say, I need to add some energy into my system. And so when people tend to have that collapse, shame, that might look like, I'm going to sit back up, lift up my breastbone, open my shoulders. I'm going to try and lengthen through my spine. And I mean, I can feel my energy come up just from that.
Too.
So those little ways that we learn to do it, especially in the heat of the moment when we are triggered, that's where we really get change, because our survival brain, which is the part of our brain that's determining what state we move into, is learning something new in that situation. And we just spoke about so much of what we do is respond to what's happened in our past, because our nervous system, it shapes itself based on our experiences, with our relationships and the environments we're in. So essentially, we can teach it something new, a new way of responding today that's far more empowering and keeps us more regulated.
Love that.
Cool.
So cool. So the vagus nerve and nervous system is flexible, resilient. How might someone know when there's quite a lot of dysregulation happening, where they get stuck in this chronic state of fight or flight?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Philly, you did ask me that about the vagus nerve when
No,
it's
that's
not
okay.
So when we look at the nervous system states, we can look at it as having three primary states, and we've touched on these a little bit. So we can say our regulated state, which is, let's say we're talking with somebody, we feel connected, we feel that sense of warmth. We might say in this state, it's that sense of feeling safe and social, like someone who really sees and hears you. But we said before, if someone was being a little bit rude, maybe talking over the top of us, maybe said something offensive, and we feel that immobilization happen first, that takes us up into the sympathetic nervous system state. And basically in that state, it's just mobilizing energy to meet a challenge and face a demand. So stress itself gets a really bad rap, but it's not actually bad for us if we get to recover fully from it. So if we take, say, that annoying person who was talking over the top of us, and we felt the sympathetic energy come up, and we have, what happens in that time is the vagus nerve actually withdraws. So that lets that energy come in, because the vagus nerve is acting a little bit like a brake on our heart and slowing our physiology down. So say our mobilizing energy comes in, but, once we leave, we go for a walk, we start to feel better. The vagus nerve will come back on, our heart rate will slow down, and that mobilizing energy will go back to, it'll dissipate back to where we started. Now, the other way things can go, which I mentioned before as well, is the drop in energy. So from that regulated state, we might drop down and feel the sense of hypoarousal, and that has also been called the dorsal vagal state. In that state, we'll feel more of a collapse, but its energy is immobilizing. So we had the mobilizing before, this one is immobilizing. And it's tricky because we sometimes say, well, why would my nervous system immobilize me when I feel threatened? Why would I freeze? Why would I collapse? But if we think about it evolutionary wise, it actually makes a lot of sense, because if we were being chased or we're in a really dangerous situation, collapsing can deter a predator who thinks, oh, well, they're not running away. But it also means that we might not be seen if we drop to the ground. And for a lot of people, this can be the safest thing that happens. If someone's in a dangerous situation with somebody who is threatening them and they freeze, that might be a safer thing to have happen than to fight. Yeah. So it's a very protective thing. And I think our society doesn't quite have a handle on understanding this so well. It's a bit judgy around, well, why didn't they do something if they were having such a hard time? Or why didn't they speak up? But people with this, if you move into this physiological state, you can't. So when we talk about what is traumatic and what is not traumatic, moving into that dorsal vagal state at the time of something difficult, where we freeze or we have a collapse, we could say is really what might define that as being something traumatic. And then what can happen is that the nervous system continues to respond with the same energy to challenges today. So then I go to, do something at work like a presentation, I might feel myself freeze or collapse, or in difficult conversations, I might completely just withdraw, isolate. And that's how, again, the nervous system's always changing and shaping itself. But if we spend long periods of time in either the mobilization state where we're anxious, angry, irritated, we don't sleep because we can't wind down, or we're down in that shutdown, we're in collapse or freeze, essentially what would look like burnout as well, then we can call that dysregulation. And so it's a little bit like we're stuck on high, we're stuck on low, or for some people, they oscillate between the two states.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about trauma a lot as well, which can keep people in either one of those states, like the too high, too low. So what's from a nervous system perspective, because it is the body and it's not just the mind, what's your take in terms of being able to process past trauma so someone can start self-regulating?
It's a great question. And what we'll see in people who are dysregulated is that there is a lower, we call it vagal tone, but this is where we say the vagus nerve isn't working as well. And that is because of, at the time, if we're still responding where the vagus nerve withdrew, because we haven't completed the stress cycle per se, we then don't have that vagus nerve coming in and having a break on our physiology. So let's say if you imagine you're on a bicycle and you're going downhill, you're just going to keep a little bit of the brakes engaged with your fingers so you don't go too fast. Well, that's what the vagus nerve is doing to us at rest. But when we have experienced something traumatic, it's a little bit like that brake isn't engaged. And so we go downhill afterwards and we end up going too fast. We have the hypervigilance, the really high levels of anxiety, panic, or for some people it presents as anger and rage. And then if we can't cope with that, we end up shifting into that, like the collapse. Now, I think for a lot of people, we think of something traumatic happening as being psychological. It's like, well, it's in my mind, isn't it? But if we look at this from a nervous system point of view and a neuroscience point of view, what we see happens is that we have a loss of vagal tone, which is in the body. We have an increase in sympathetic activation, which is also in the body. And when we look at what happens for people that move into that shutdown state, they often dissociate from the body. So it's not body or brain, it's actually how they communicate. And so if I'm going into that shutdown dissociative state where I can't really connect with my body, it's about the signals from the body not reaching the brain and keeping the brain online. So there's two really important regions here. And stay with me because I'll go a bit nerdy, but it's important, I think, for people to understand this. But one of the main regions is deep in the center of the brain, what we call the insula or the insular cortex. Now, when we've looked at research on people with post-traumatic stress disorder, they can go two ways. So if you imagine that bodily signals are like the volume on music, and so I can have signals that the volume is turned up too high, so it's really loud. Now, those signals are being relayed via the vagus nerve primarily, but there's also the spinal cord as well. And if they're too loud, I feel them, I get overwhelmed, and it shows that the insula, there's a lot of activity happening in there. It's a bit like Heathrow Airport, right in the middle of the brain. There's planes flying in, there's planes flying here, flying there. And one of the ways that the planes tend to fly is to the fear circuitry. So we feel a sensation and automatically it gets appraised as something really bad's going to happen, and that escalates what's happening. So that process of noticing and understanding our bodily signals is called interoception. It's our 8th sensory system. So, we've got our 5 outer-facing senses. Right. Then we've got our 6th sense, which is proprioception, or the joint position of our body in space. We've got our 7th sense related to our vestibular system, or the position of our head. And then interoception is a system that is telling us, like relaying to the brain what's happening in the body. And it's a big feedback loop of the vagus nerve that's saying, this is coming up to the brain, and then the brain is responding back down. Now, when we look at interoception and people who tend to cut off from their body or shut down, it's showing that when signals are relayed via the vagus nerve, there's a loss of activity in the insula. And so they don't reach our awareness. And if we look at that, what it tells us is that people may struggle to understand their bodily states. So it's like not having cues of hunger, thirst. So that influences their ability to regulate their physiology because they can't take care of it. But then it's also to do with their emotions. And so in this case, we might not notice we're getting irritated. We might not notice, okay, this irritation is going to anger. And then we end up flipping our lid because we haven't been able to read these bodily signals. So in that case, it's like the volume is too quiet. And so the best thing that people can do once or following traumatic stress, and this can also be the case for neurodivergent individuals as well.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Exactly. They fall into these differences in the interoceptive awareness, is to fine tune this process. And this is where the vagus nerve goes so much further than just, cold showers. It's really like the essence of how we take care of ourselves, but also how we live in line with our values, how we, take care of our bodily states and our emotions. And the beauty of this system is that it is something we can retrain. It's like if we sprain our ankle, there's swelling. And this is, I've come from that physiotherapy background. Swollen ankle, we used to train people's proprioceptors by saying, okay, stand on something uneven with your eyes closed. And that will help people tune into their brain, their body position in space. That would improve over time. They'd go back to playing footy, soccer, netball, whatever it was. And we can do the same with the signals inside of our body and help this system respond accurately to what's happening today, rather than responding to the traumatic events that have happened in our past.
Yeah. Wow.
That's cool.
Both of us are just like, wow. Okay. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay, I do. Or you do?
I haven't formulated it yet.
Okay. No, just when you were talking about, so when these signals are too low, because I'm thinking about clients as well, and some really struggle to feed themselves or to drink water because those cues are just turned off. And, obviously we need to drink water and we need to fuel our body and nourish our body. So from that point of view, like, how do you turn the signals up?
So we might need to, first of all, lean into exteroception cues. That's the things outside of us to help us. And that could be, okay, first of all, to get used to checking into bodily signals, I'm going to set an alarm on my phone 5 times a day, to get used to checking into my body. Because I think for a lot of people who are in that state and are shut down and they're not feeling what's happening in their body, it's just not going to come naturally to begin with if it's been a long time. So setting an alarm. And for neurodivergent individuals, like we mentioned, this means we might need someone external to start to tell us, to help us with that. Like we might need help with, like, around when we're going to eat. But also making the shift away from, oh, okay, it's 12:30, it's time for lunch, to what's my hunger levels? Am I hungry? What's, like if we have cues to remind us what's when might grab a drink, can we check in with the bodily signals as well? And so one thing that we look at in research revolves around this granularity. And if we think about, like, people might recognize, well, I just feel bad, or I just feel stressed, or I just don't feel great. It's like, well, what are the bodily signals that tell you that? So for instance, if we looked at hunger, the bodily signals that tell us that we're hungry could be my stomach's growling, I feel faint, and I'm starting to feel a bit irritable if I'm hangry, say. But we can say for anxiety, for instance, what are the bodily signals that tell us that we're getting anxious? So if we think about, for a lot of people, this might start out as our heart beats a bit faster. Well, that could be anxiety, but it could also be excitement. It could also be something joyful. So we learn to say, but then there's also tension in my shoulders, and maybe my jaw's a little bit tight and I feel a bit shaky. And then we could say, it's those bodily signals that tell me that I'm anxious. And that's where we start. So it's two or more bodily signals that make up an emotion. But so often we only stay at the level of, I feel bad, I feel stressed. And so research has shown this granularity that we can have actually is psychologically protective. And it really is, again, that essence of being able to proactively manage both our bodily states, so around food, around water, when we need a break from work, like what I was saying, when I was constantly overriding my limits a lot younger. But also we can proactively take care of our emotions. And if we can capture these signals early, it means we can stop ourselves from moving into dysregulation in the first place, and we learn to work on a more even keel. So much of that dysregulation that comes from not being able to read cues may not be because we're in highly stressful situations today. It could simply be that we're not able to read our bodily signals yet.
Awesome.
That's so interesting too. I've been talking with some clients recently about like these bodily signals, especially with anxiety and overwhelm, and that, the body produces these signals to try and protect us from a threat. But then the bodily sensations, when you're not aware of them and you don't really know how to communicate and like calm the system down, becomes the threat against the threat rather than the defense. Like, your whole system kind of gets confused about what's going on here, and then the threat becomes how your body feels.
Absolutely. That's 100% right. If we look at the concept of what we call neuroception, which is how we move between our different states, so that is really how we detect, outside of conscious awareness, if people, places, or situations are safe, dangerous, or life-threatening. What informs that process are the signals inside our body and our exteroceptors, so what we see, hear, taste, smell, all of those things. So if we start to feel inside our body, like our gut feels awful, we have chronic pain, those things themselves can be the threat. So it can come from inside our body not feeling great. And so this is why, again, it's really important that we have these skills to manage our bodily states and our emotions. Not that we can always do that. Like, I want to speak to, a lot of people have persistent pain, and that can be a daily challenge for them. But when we can learn to recognize the aspects of those that we can control, including our thoughts around what might be happening in our nervous system or our body, that's when we really start to take back that sense of control, and we're back in the driver's seat.
So good.
I was just going to say, like, I'm thinking existentially and floating up. Another fear could be, I'm afraid I don't even know who I am anymore. I've lost my sense of identity. I'm not sure. I can't do the things, but I do the things. So if I can't do the things that I do, who am I anymore? And so that would still be, maybe it might not be a physical place that they're afraid. Like it's an emotional, it's a existential place. It's kind of the same sort of thing will happen, right? It's kind of like, I'm not sure what ception that would be under, but
which eighth sense.
It's very true. I think what you're saying relates really beautifully to the sense of self. And when we think about what we're trying to do here, it's to protect this sense of self. And we've been really exploring this with social media, for instance, because I think it's the perfect place to see this in action. But a few things you said, Chris, I think are so great to pull apart there. And there's research that's shown with physical pain, you know, like a violinist, let's say a professional person who plays the violin, and they get a paper cut, they're going to experience that pain higher than somebody who's not a professional musician, because of this threat around, well, what does this mean for my income? What does it mean for my identity and my sense of self if I can't be that person that I've become? And I really see that when we put the labels on ourselves because of our nervous system responses, you know, like if we're anxious all the time, it's like, oh, I'm so needy and sensitive and I'm so codependent because I have to reach out to people for support. It just amplifies what is already a struggle. You know, we're adding a second layer of struggle on top of the first. And when we look at that sense of self as to who we are, there is no fixed sense of who we are. It's a dynamic process that's happening between the way our body and brain communicate. But we are trying to protect something, and that's the beauty of our nervous system. But if we think about when we're in that hyper arousal, we might be more of like the protector, you know, I'm going to protect myself, this sense of self. But when we drop down into that dorsal vagal sense, we might feel more as though, you know, we need to be protected. It's a little bit more of that real vulnerability there. So I love that you bring that in, because pain, physical pain, and the way that our nervous system responds, you know, there's not this black and white linear way of responding. It's all of these complex intricacies around identity, around values, around our history, genetics, and that's what makes it so interesting. But I think as well, it's helpful for us to have an understanding that goes beyond, oh, I've cut my finger, therefore I'll have this much pain. Or I went through this event, therefore it's traumatic or it's not traumatic. Because what we're seeing is we can't use that as a framework of understanding. It's highly subjective based on each individual person.
Wow.
Yeah. From a physical point of view, so people struggling with body burnout, running busy, overwhelm patterns often show up with energy, mood, gut issues, and definitely chronic pain. We have been talking about the connection between the body and the mind and the pain. I guess my question actually would be, why do you feel like nervous system dysregulation is often the main reason why someone's not responding to physical protocols?
It's such a great question.
That's a very black and white question, wasn't it? It's like there might be some grey in that.
I'm running through my head of all the patients and scenarios as we talk. But if somebody has had, I'm going to say, months of an ongoing condition, like, you know, looking at gut issues, physical pain, insomnia, and it's not getting better, and there's been, you know, been to X amount of health professionals, had some assessments done, but it's still persisting, we have to consider the nervous system as a root cause. We have to consider that there's been a shift in the nervous system away from the baseline that's created these changes through the process of neuroplasticity. And I think it's helpful for us to have that understanding. I think it's really empowering for people, but I think we also need to look at the acute, to look at the organic issues as well. But if we look at the hallmarks of health of the nervous system, it's the gut, it's inflammation, so therefore pain, but also, you know, that can show up in skin conditions and things like that. And it's also our sleep. And so if we're looking at things as a cluster of symptoms, you know, like I'm anxious, I can't sleep, and I've got gut issues, it can help us to start to see those patterns, particularly if we're going through difficult periods in our life. So yes, I think it's something where we say, well, we can't rule it out. And for me, that was very much the pattern of the patients I saw, because I was working with a demographic who had experienced or had PTSD. So I think it's really helpful. But we don't have to have had a big trauma to necessarily have dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
Chronic stress can do the same. So if we're looking at this acute stress, like we talked about before, where we see the sympathetic energy come up and the vagus nerve drops down, what that looks like is that we have a change in the way some of our systems work. And one of the best places we see this is in the gut. So the vagus nerve is responsible for maintaining motility of the gut, or the movement of food through the gut, which we know will influence in turn it'll influence our microbiome. It'll influence if we have constipation or not. All of those things then can lead to flow-on effects into other things. And I mean, if you look at irritable bowel syndrome now, which we used to talk about so much as, I just need to not eat dairy, or I just need to not eat gluten. Mm-hmm. But now it's been reclassified as a disorder of gut-brain interaction. So there are some things like IBS that we certainly want to look at through a nervous system lens, and also with persistent pain, because pain, it is a response to threat. So if our nervous system is picking up on this threat, it is highly likely that there will be changes in how that is being interpreted through both the body and the brain, creating this persistent pain. So there's definitely some where we really see that it's nervous system dysregulation is the underlying part of it, but it's also really helpful for us, as I said, to look at ruling out anything organic as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When you mentioned dairy intolerance, I had actually it was an allergy. Even the tiniest amount of milk solids would cause a lot of inflammatory type symptoms. Definitely doing gut work, like the physical protocol, helped, but it wasn't until I did this more mind body looking at it like, this actually isn't a dangerous food, and really changing my perception of the food. However it started, it doesn't really matter, but it was just this interconnection between the body and mind that just was not happy when I was eating dairy. So it's so powerful. We're such powerful beings, and the research around neuroplasticity is just amazing, because literally we can recreate whatever we want to recreate in our bodies.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Last question. I'm curious, are there any mistakes that people make when they start to regulate their nervous system?
Yeah, so
myths?
I've probably touched on this a little bit with my whinges and my bugbears, but I think the biggest one comes down to the principles of neuroplasticity is that specificity that I spoke about. So, if we look at creating change in the nervous system, what we do needs to be specific to the state we're in. I would say, we often hear just use a long, slow exhalation to regulate your nervous system. But if I'm in that dorsal vagal state we spoke about, I already have my heart rate slowed right down, and I already have my blood pressure really low. I'm going to say too low. So if I then just use this generic approach of, okay, I'll use long, slow, deep breathing, I could feel worse. And when I was talking back to you about the burnout state, and I was spending times in the dorsal vagal state, I went to a yin yoga class on one particular day, and I felt so much worse afterwards, because I dropped down more and more and more, and I felt so down in this impending sense of doom after doing that class.
Wow.
So I love yin yoga. I absolutely love it. But at that particular time, there was so much focus on that dropping down, 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 that it wasn't the right thing for me. I should have done something that was going to upregulate. So that would be the biggest thing that I would see as a mistake. But, again, we can learn from that too and say next.
Yeah. What would be an example of upregulating if someone was in that deep exhaustion, depression
I
state?
think for a lot of people, the best thing, because that dorsal vagal state, for a lot of people, they will say it feels like I'm in a cold, dark room alone. And the best thing we can do is connect with other people. And it doesn't have to be, we put so much focus around what we say and how we talk about things, but it could be as simple as going to get a coffee and you get a smile and a moment of connection with the barista, and you feel like this warmth in your heart that says, oh yeah, I've got this sense of belonging in my community. That can be enough to shift. It can be going to a location where people are. It doesn't need to be, I think people shy away from reaching out when they feel in this state because they think they've got to talk about everything. And that has its place. But from this state, it's mostly about connection and being with other people. And also, if we speak back to that brain-body communication where signals are too quiet in that state, we want to use movement. We want to connect with our body in ways that turn the volume back up on bodily signals, which for, some people that can be, well, I'm going to lay on the ground and I'm going to practice rocking my knees side to side. I'm just going to do some really gentle up-regulating movement. And even like the isometric contractions where I might push my feet down into the ground and feel the muscles contracting in my body. And that can turn the volume back up on the signals traveling up to the brain via the vagus nerve, which can help to bring enough integration that we come back in towards regulation.
So much good information. It's just like, whoa, so much meaty stuff.
Love it.
Oh, thank you so much. I know that all our listeners are going to gather so much more insight into how to listen to your body essentially as well, and some things that you can do. So if anyone wants to find out more about you, how can they find you? Do you have any resources that you'd like to share?
Yes. Well, we've got loads of free resources on our website. So you can either go to jessicamaguire.com or nervoussystemschool.com. But probably where I'm the most active is Instagram. And my handle there is repairing_the_nervous_system.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been awesome having you on.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, we'll catch you later and look forward to connecting again.
Thanks so much, guys. That was so fun.
Yay.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya. Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout Assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook.
Have the best day ever.